Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Monisha Sanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Dara Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om A Guru Vajradar Sumati Monisha Sanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke kudan dage lo pakyuke sundan dage pakyuke tukdan dage yi ten yerme çıktı çinge lo makyuke kudan dagi lu ma kyuke sundan dagi nga ma kyuke tukdan dagi yi ten yerme çıktı çingi lu Om Sashipeke choshimeto Tramare Rabalingashi Nide Agenpati Sange Shintu Mikte Ulawarki Drokunanamda Shingla Chopar Shoyidam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Yami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam Lai Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chuchin Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chuchin gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment with the practice of generosity and the other perfections. May I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo ya lae ke da ludan chin ke drun da da mi ke nam da. Drwa kunge danam che tsampa tham che ke to dagi che ten to. Tham che ke to dagi che ten to. Buongiorno.
Good morning. Every once in a while, it's happened that people have asked me if Buddhism is a religion or not. And I don't think I've ever given the real answer. I mean, what I think. What I've always said, okay, well, define what religion is to you, and let's see if I can answer. And you can enter in the whole explanation. Okay, is it a monotheistic? Is it a polytheistic religion? Is it actually a religion if it is polytheistic? But what I think, on a more intimate level, let's say, is that it doesn't really matter. The point isn't really if it's a religion or not. The point is much more connected to the answer that Buddha gave when they asked him if God existed or not. At a certain point, it's said that Buddha said, I'm not here to tell you if a God or if many gods exist or don't exist or how they are, how they're not. I'm here only to explain to you how to suffer less. And at the end of the day, for me, it's not whether Buddhism is a religion or not. I mean, those are concepts. The important key, obviously, is from what I've seen, what I've lived. I mean, one can get close to Buddhism regardless of one's background or belief. I mean, this I've seen. That's obvious to me. But what's important is that we all want to be well, and to me, it's not about belonging to a religion or not, about being Buddhist. The point is that Buddha Shakyamuni had his own experience. He found his own balance and shared that experience with those who wanted to listen. These prayers, these recitations that we did now at the beginning, actually, and it's because it's all in Tibetan, it's difficult maybe to understand, but they talk about that because the first part is where we remember our masters. It's a way to say what I'm here to share with you. It's not something that I invented. It's something that I received from my masters, and then I translate it, let's say, according to the time in which we live. If I were to use the same terminology and methods, that how I received all this, I can assure you that it would be difficult. For example, when I received and the teachings on the functions of the mind. I went to my master in India and I said, "Oh, Genla, I want to learn the 51 mental factors." And then he asked me, "Have you already memorized the root text?" No. Okay, then come back once you've memorized the whole root text, and then come back to me, and then I'll explain it to you. Luckily, it wasn't very long, but just what I can offer is something that I have received. So that first prayer, we ask for the blessings of the masters, also as a way to remember and to remind us that what I can offer is what I have received. And I show also my gratitude, starting with Buddha Shakyamuni. Then we have the mandala offering that is given with that melody that's a little slower, that's the Sashipukyi. And that reminds us also that Buddha never taught anything if he wasn't asked, because there's no proselytism in Buddhism, or this idea that that one goes around and convincing people of an idea. And if we look at Buddhist teaching today, those that have been written down, also Jesus, he never, like Jesus, Buddha never wrote anything down. So it's about 300 years after his death that it was all written, and it is said, Buddha has said. But all sutras begin with a question. It's almost never Buddha goes around saying, "Oh, you need to understand this," or "I need to tell you this." No, it's all based on a request. And then based on that request, Buddha offered that response, and then teaches on that basis. So even today, one of the rules that is established by who teaches, one shouldn't teach those who haven't requested this teaching, and once that request has been made, one cannot refuse to teach. Obviously, one can't teach what one doesn't know or doesn't have the resources to do so. But this is the rule, and one reason for that is because if I try to explain something to someone who doesn't want to hear it, it's just not going to work. When we want to listen to something, when we want to learn something, we're open for that, and at that point, that has a greater influence and over us. So this Sashipukyi, the mandala offering, is a kind of is a request that we're making. It's a kind of ritual, and these rituals are often created to remind us of something important. So this ritual, let's say, before teaching, is done, but it's to remind us that nothing no teachings are given unless they're asked. And I imagine that none of you has been forced to be here today. And just being here, that's naturally a request for teachings. And then we connect to our motivation. I mean, why do we want to teach? Why do we want to share Buddha's teachings? It's for an inner growth, it's not at all connected or linked to mundane powers or wealth or anything like that. But at the base of all of this is that each one of us, deeply, what we want is to be well, to be happy. It's strange sometimes to say it because we see this we see this world from different points of view, and also we look at the world with many situations of deep conflicts. We don't need to go very far. Sometimes just our neighbors or within the family or at work, we see people with very, very different points of view. But at the basis of all of this, we all want the same thing. At the basis, we all want to be well and we don't want to suffer. This is the starting point. And unfortunately, we have this obsession with self-gratification where we think that my happiness and my well-being is my greatest priority. Okay, I want to be happy and you want to be happy, but my happiness is more important than yours. And we have different different wills or that separates us, and often what we do to be happy, that just doesn't work. Sometimes when I'm thinking about this, I think about this cartoon that I would see as a child in Brazil. It was called The Crazy Race. It was this is the sensation, the memory that was left in my mind. It was this crazy, crazy race, and everyone puts an enormous amount of effort to be last. So, and just get hurt, and we do everything we can to be well, but we actually just end up hurting ourselves. Even like hatred and anger, where does that come from? It comes from actually the will to not suffer. I want to get away from what I think makes me suffer. But what do I do with anger? I suffer much more. This is just one example. And today the subject, the art, what we're going to talk about today is meditating. I mean, why should we meditate? And starts from this deep, deep desire. Often we use the term this Brahma, this longing to not suffer. This is what's at the basis of it all. We have a predisposition to seeing things in an incoherent way. Let me try to explain myself. Everything that we see, we have a tendency to see things separately, when actually we live in a situation, in a reality that is where everything is related. Everything exists as it does. It is as it is. Every person is as he or she is. Every object as it is exists in relation to others. If we try to see that person, that situation, that object, whatever it is, outside of that relationship, then it changes. And this goes on a macro level, talking about a galaxy, to a very micro quantic level. Everything exists on a quantum level. But we separate things, and there are three fundamental points that are necessary. They have to be in harmony for us to be well. There are three fundamental points that are our surroundings, our body, and our mind. We're influenced by our environment, and I don't mean just if it's hot, cold, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink. I'm talking about all the objects of our senses, all the the people that we interact with, our entire surroundings, everything we interact with, all the objects around us. For me, I had this recent experience that had me thinking quite deeply. We were in Mongolia, and a group of 80 people, and then that second part of the trip, we were 40 people. So 40 half stayed and 40 left, and it was a kind of hiking experience, but then it snowed too much, so we didn't actually do much hiking. But it was in it was in this on this mountain Altai, where we could see we were near Kazakhstan, and we were, could see the Russian border, the Chinese border. Anyway, we were in a kind of tent, and then except in August, it was minus 15 degrees, and it snowed a lot. Every day was about -5. Normally, if I don't sleep well, or if during the night I wake up a couple times in the morning, I feel a little, I don't have all the energy. I don't have the energy of someone who slept well. I think we're all the same like this. But the first night, hardly anyone slept well. I mean, because there was tremendous, there was so much wind with snow that it felt like someone was actually moving the tents, and people were afraid that the tent was going to flip over. Instead, I would wake up full of energy and joy, and I see other people, it was the same. And I'd ask people, did you sleep well? No. But did you wake up well? Yes. Is that normal? No. So it's interesting to see that place had this characteristic that everyone who was there, it gave a certain kind of energy and joy. And in the morning, I'd wake up and had to go to the bathroom, about 100 meters with snow up to my kneecaps, with so much snow, and to get to that little tiny tent. And I don't know why, but it was joyous. And when I left this place, at a certain point, after we went down the mountain, the fatigue really came. This is one of the characteristics of a holy place. So when you interact with that place, a holy place, it helps you to develop an like inner quality that really helps you feel good. It's just to say that we are naturally, spontaneously influenced by our surroundings. It's normal. Just look at if the person next to you it has some kind of hormonal imbalance, let's say, and starts reacting badly, or does that influence or not? It influences us, sure. So our surroundings in every aspect has an aspect of influence, and living in a healthy environment is extremely important. We already try to do this our best. We try to take care of, to have a beautiful house. We try to take care of our surroundings, and in our ability or inability, we try to create harmony with the people around us, as we already try to do. But it's not enough just to have a comfortable or positive surroundings. We need to physically be well, because having a healthy environment with an unhealthy body, then we don't feel well. Our body has, on a physical level, chemical level, has a level of influence on our well-being that is that is much greater than what we are aware of. And this reminds me of the importance of our microbiome, our intestinal flora. And it reminds me of this experiment they did with the mice, and they saw that some mice were more aggressive and some were more calm, and they exchanged their the gut flora. So they gave the gut flora of the nervous ones to the calm ones, and they became nervous, and vice versa. What they saw that our intestinal health has an enormous influence on our well-being, our character also. So how we eat, how we sleep, etc., that influences tremendously our intestinal flora, and that influences our state of being tremendously. But I mean, it's now part of our culture also to eat in a healthy way, to do exercises, to sleep well. Even if we're able just to a certain point, we already are quite aware of all of this. We could add to this that we should learn how to breathe correctly, sit in the correct way, and also doing what's good for us and not just what we like. That would help as well. But there's a third fundamental characteristic factor, and that's our mental state. Years ago, I had a long conversation with a friend who was a psychiatrist in Brazil, and the question was, who's in charge, our body or the mind? And we talked about this for a long time, and our final conclusion was, if the boss were our body, then we would just need the correct chemical balance to be happy. And his experience, and he's very, very good psychiatrist, and he said, when you chemically you can manipulate the balance, or the person, the balance of that person, it has a positive effect at the beginning, but then after a while, it's not enough. But instead, when you have a change on a mental level, that changes on a chemical level, and that's long lasting. So if you find someone who is depressed or has this emotional imbalance and has this unhealthy chemical imbalance, he says that person needs like physical help at the beginning to bring the body to a minimum amount of balance, to allow the mind to then continue with a change of habits, change of mind, a psychological process. And our final conclusion was that the mind is in charge. And here there's a fundamental point. Shantideva in the Bodhisattva said, this is very antique text, the guide of the lifestyle of a bodhisattva. He said, there's nothing that is not easy once you're used to it. We are made up of habits, our body and our mind. How does a habit work? The more I repeat something, the easier it becomes. If I don't repeat it, then it just is harder to do it, and I forget. There's a scientific term well, there's a saying, use it or use it, that talks about the plasticity of the mind. And it's explained that one of the main functions of our brain is to manage our energy. And when we realize that we don't do something, then we're not going to dedicate energy to that. For example, if we don't work at doing calculations by hand, then we lose that ability to do it. For example, in the United States, they've started using AI to read scans, and the results were excellent. That AI system is able to find sicknesses. I mean, actually able to read the scans better than the people, and with doctors that are really quite expert. After using this AI for 3 months, using it to read these scans, these doctors who had been doing this work for years, they had lost 20% of their ability. So, if you don't use it, you lose it. I mean, we are made like this. And the more you use it, the stronger that skill becomes, or whatever becomes. So the more we do something mentally, the easier it becomes, more natural it becomes. The more we repeat something, the more easy it becomes. But we see our emotional state of being as a result of our surroundings and of our body. Often I feel sad because this happened. I'm angry because of this situation or that situation. We live our inner state of being as if it were a mere result of the situations that we find ourselves in, external situations we find ourselves in. And we don't remember that actually we live the external situations through the filter of our mind and our body. It's a little bit asking like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. It's difficult to say, inside, outside. I mean, one doesn't exist without the other. So I didn't want to get into this whole topic of the correct view of reality. Now it's not the moment. But what happens is our emotional state, our mental state, the education that we've received, the knowledge that we've received, our emotional state at this moment, these are filters through which we perceive reality. When we're nervous, how do we see the world? If I put, rose-colored lenses, I see the world pink. If I put, if I put on, dark blue lenses, I see the world darker. Or if someone's in love, for example, that person sees everything beautifully. Or if someone's feeling a little depressed, everything is negative. What we haven't learned, I mean, I'm just generalizing, maybe someone has, but generalizing, what we haven't learned is that our mind can be taught. In this process of education, schools, and the university, is there a subject like mental training, how to train the mind and becoming more satisfied, more loving, etc.? I don't think so. But this is something possible. And here in Buddhism, this passage is made up of 3 steps. When one starts this starts this process, this path to some gusum. So, which is listening, understanding, and familiarizing, often translated as meditating. Listening is when we acquire information. I can listen, for example, I can listen to about the benefits of patience and how harmful an attitude of selfishness and arrogance is, or feeling anger. I mean, I can spend hours and hours reading and listening. Or another classic example. So one of the first things we learn in Buddhism is this preciousness of this life and the certainty of death. I can listen to that a lot, and I'm acquiring information. I read, I listen. This is the first step. The second step is about understanding. Understanding is when that information, after a process of reflection and analysis, debate, is no longer something that someone told me, but is my own certainty. The topic of death is quite easy, but there's an enormous difference between having the certainty of one's own mortality on a conceptual level, or when compared to a direct experience, like. For example, a couple of years ago when I had this anaphylactic shock, at the very beginning, I wasn't really understanding what was going on. It was almost pleasurable, but then when I was in my room and I was red from my head to my toe, and I started getting a fever. When I spoke to doctor friends of mine, they told me how dangerous that situation was, and I remember. There was that moment of, oh my God, I could, my goodness, I can die at any moment. I mean, this is the part of understanding, and it's no longer information that someone has given us. It's something that really becomes our own, and anybody could come and say the opposite, but we can't be convinced otherwise. It's like studying about the burning qualities of fire, being sure of that, but then actually feeling the heat of fire. So if we study traditionally in the Buddhism, like I did in India, we spend about 30% listening and reading and listening to teachings, and 70% of our time debating. Dialectics, debate, where you really need to look at that in every aspect, but really understand it deeply. And often we think, oh, I've understood this. Okay, that's already a lot. Great. Like, I remember when I was a child, my father came home. I was maybe 7 years old, and I remember my father came home, and he was really happy. He was studying Buddhism at the time, and he said, "Wow, finally I've understood. I've understood the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is unlimited attachment and anger." And I remember thinking, oh, you've understood. Let's see. After about 3 minutes go by, and he started screaming about something. Okay, you've understood, right? For my father, he's an example of someone who can really change. When I was young, the situation was often quite hot. Let's say, no, that's no longer true. But once we've now we get to the, once we've listened and once we've understood, then we get into the longer process of familiarizing ourselves, repeating, often translated as meditation. And here we have a problem. There's a problem of translation, which we find a lot here in the West, because the word in Tibetan gom, from which meditation comes as a translation, it actually means something else. If I say meditate on love, what idea do you have on about that? Reflect on the concept of love. Think about love. Or we have another idea of meditation, like staying, in silence and emptying our mind. Instead, if I say familiarize yourself with love, that means you need to generate love so that it comes more and more spontaneously. Gom in Tibetan, actually, the more correct translation would be to get used to familiarize oneself, which starts from that principle that we talked about of our mind, that the more we repeat something, the more natural it becomes. So if I want to feel more love, I need to familiarize myself with the feeling of love. If I want to have more awareness in the preciousness of this life, my own mortality, etc., I need to generate this feeling where I feel that and I familiarize myself with that. So when we say meditate, actually it's much greater than what we think. It makes reference to familiarizing ourselves, getting used to. We generate, we induce this feeling in a and then we just familiarize ourselves with that mental state. So we are able to educate ourselves also on an emotional level, gratitude, satisfaction, love itself. These are all characteristics that we can teach ourselves. We can familiarize ourselves with these feelings. And here we come to why we meditate. So for me, meditation is also where we take the reins of our life in our own hands, where we say my own mental state, my not not cognitive, but also emotional mind is it makes reference to both, even because the word emotion is quite a new word. It doesn't even exist in Tibetan, emotion. And in our Western language, I also read that even in the West it's quite new as a term. So even when we try to translate emotion into Tibetan, it's very difficult. But if instead we say mind, there's the cognitive aspect. There's also all the feelings. Anyway, as the way we live our life, the choices we make depend much more on our mental states of being compared to the conditions around us. Because when I'm in front of a situation, the reaction that I'm going to have depends on how I live it. Because we live in a subjective reality, we are unable to live and perceive anything independently from the filters of self. So working on those filters is one of the most powerful ways that exist to change our life. And for this reason, we need to start from a start from this fundamental point that I can be the boss of myself. As Buddha said, I am my own protector. I am my own enemy. Let me, and I hope to not be too direct here. The starting, the fundamental starting point, which is not a small point, is we need to stop victimizing ourselves. As long as I say, oh well, I'm not well. It's true that I could be more patient, but did you see what that person did? I know I would like to be more satisfied, but look at the situation I find myself in. As long as we victimize ourselves and we blame others, naturally we're giving the solution also to others, and we're waiting for that situation to change. We're waiting for things to be different, not waiting for things to be different so that we stop suffering. And I'm not saying that we're not influenced by our surroundings and that our physical state is not important, and the people around us. All of this has an enormous power over and influence over us, but the power that our own mind has over us is even greater. Like when I went to my master in India, again, Lakpala, and I was just a boy, and I needed to travel from India to Indonesia, and I asked him, could you please look at the dates and if the day that I'm traveling, is that astrologically auspicious or positive? And I asked him, and he said no, but he knew how to do it. I asked him, well, you know how to do it? Yes, but can you just see if it's a good day to travel or not? And he just kept saying no. And I said, well, please tell me why. Why won't you look at the dates? And he said, it's easy. Have you already bought your tickets? Yes. Are you ready to change the date if it's not a good day to travel? No. Okay, so let's say that I go to look and we see that just by chance that date is not a good day to travel. The influence of your mind over yourself and what happens is much greater than all the stars in the sky. So if you still needed to buy your ticket, I would look, of course. Our inner state of being has an enormous influence on how we see things. Being our own protector is about saying, who do I want to be? Do I want to be a more patient person, a more stable person? Okay, there are things that I can do to help myself there. And I'm not there victimizing myself, and waiting for the circumstances to change. Because we don't have a choice as to whether we want to transform ourselves or not. Just to give an idea of this, once I was in a congress in Holland organized by Lama Michel. There were many doctors, including our good friend Rogier, and it was a congress on medicine and spirituality, and he gave many beautiful things were discussed. Talking about our intestinal balance, or talking about epigenetics, etc., etc. And then at a certain point, I said, I don't agree with your conclusion that we can change. He said, what do you mean that we can't change? I said, no, it's not a choice. We are constantly in transformation. We don't have this choice to transform or not. We are in a constant process of familiarization. It's a question of, do I want to familiarize myself with awareness or without, just by following the habits that I already have? The more I get angry, the angrier I will become. The more dissatisfied I feel, the more dissatisfied I will feel. I mean, every contact, every interaction that we have, the more through every interaction there's a transformation. So the question is, I hear this crossroads: do I want to transform with awareness or without? To transform with awareness, this process, this path has three parts. In Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, there are always lists, and here are the three parts. We have a basis, the path, and our result. The basis, the foundation is accepting who I am now, and accepting the resources that I have. We cannot start from anywhere other than where we are. I say, okay, you could meditate well, but you need to already be able to sit down for 3 hours without any kind of mental distraction. Then I can't meditate. No, we always need to start where we are. And this is called basis, the foundation, the base. We know where we are, who we are. So we have our surroundings, our body, and our mind, and we're influenced by all these things. They're mostly these things. We can enter into details, the different levels of our surroundings, of our body and our mind. I mean, the enormous doors can open up here. There's so much to look at, but this is the basis. And the question is, so with this basis, where can I get? What's my dream? Who do I want to be? In other words, like if I go to the gym because I want to have more muscle. I see a photo of someone. I say, I want to be like that. I imagine myself like that, in that way. And that brings us to a fundamental point, that whatever path of transformation that we embark on, it's not easy, because it requires new habits. And this is substantial. I mean, going against old habits and creating new ones is not easy. And the driving force in all of this is desiring it. Desiring and believing that it's possible. If I don't desire something, I won't put energy into obtaining it. I just waiting for it to fall from the sky, waiting for some kind of miracle to happen. So before talking about the techniques of meditation, the question is, who do I want to be? What result do I want to reach? And we don't need very mystical, strange things. I mean, we can, also give mystical names to things if you want. But in simple words, do I want to be a stable person or an unstable person? Do I want that? Do I want to be a person who loses his emotional balance in front of any kind of a situation? Or do I want to have that stability regardless of the situation in front of me? Do I want to be loving and generous, or do I want to be selfish? Do I want to be calm, or do I want to be nervous? Do I want to have greater awareness, or do I want to be blind, be unaware? I'm just giving some examples, but it's just fundamental for us to paint the image of ourselves that we want to be, in Buddhism, this is represented by many, many images here. If you look, for example, you see these colored Buddhas. They don't represent gods. They represent qualities, our own qualities, developed to their maximum potential. For example, we often start with the green, our green Buddha, Amoghasiddhi. They're represented in both a male and female form. A Buddha has no has no sex. So this Amoghasiddhi represents having clarity in actions, ability to rejoice for virtuous actions of self and others, and no fear, etc. Our yellow Buddha, Ratnasambhava, represents humility, where one doesn't compare oneself to others to see oneself. So one doesn't feel superior nor inferior to others. And also generosity, the joy in sharing. We have blue akshobhya, that represents eliminating anger, sadness, resentment, hatred, and developing love, spontaneous joy, love, inner love. And red, Amitabha, represents eliminating erroneous discernment, distraction, being able to develop concentration, correct discernment, holy speech that is coherent and able to communicate well. White Vairochana represents our ability to overcome ignorance, where we live reality in a harmonious and coherent way. Wisdom. And these images, these archetypes, are they're not beings to whom we make requests. Instead, they are like mirrors of beings that we can reach. They help us reach our objective. Do I want to be full of jealousy and fear, or do I want to have courage and determination and clarity in my actions and joy for virtuous actions? Or do I want to be more arrogant, or do I want to be more humble? So here we can construct an image of who we want to be. And once we say, I want to be like this, at that point we need to get to work. So there's this we have this expression, like to get anywhere. It's made up of 99. It's 1% of inspiration and 99% of sweat. We need to work hard for it. So, and this is not conceptual. It needs to be our priority. It's about falling in love with enlightenment. Lama Ganchen just always reminded us that inner peace is the most solid foundation for world peace. Without getting into details, if we look around at the conflicts around the world, there's not a single conflict that has arisen that was caused because there weren't enough resources, or because there's not enough land for everyone, or because of wealth or lack of resources. I mean, conflicts come from based on fear and ignorance. They're fruit of the the mind of men and of people. And one solution, someone might say that it's utopic, and I think it's important to have a utopic idea. Is if we don't have these if we don't have these healthy, positive feelings, then we can't expect them outside. So if we fall in love with inner peace, okay, we can say, wonderful, our family, our jobs. So we have nothing against any of this, but my priority is my inner peace. To be more loving, to be more patient, more aware, more present, more balanced, have less envy, attachment, dissatisfaction, less hatred, jealousy, etc. This is my priority. Once we have this seriously, then meditation becomes relatively easy because we have that driving force. Very often in our modern world, in the last in the modern world, meditation is very widespread, and I don't want to criticize anyone, but I see that often meditation is used for their positive side effects, like it's good against anxiety or blood pressure, etc. Is true, but there's something deeper. And if someone meditates to diminish their anxiety and it works and they continue, that's wonderful. But if we're able to have deeper objectives and we allow ourselves to imagine our future with more calm, more happiness, wonderful, wow. And the good news is that it works, and it's much faster than we could imagine, but we need to do it. It's not that I go to the gym one day and then I don't go again for 3 weeks and then say that it doesn't work. Well, I went, it didn't work. I did many hours in the gym. One day is not enough. You need to do just a little bit, but with constancy, because this is what creates habit. When we learn something, for example, when you study, at a certain point, you need to walk away from the book, take a walk, think about something else to allow yourself to elaborate. And meditation is the same. At the beginning, we do shorter sessions, but with certain constancy. Now getting into more practical aspects of meditation. When we talk about familiarizing ourselves with something, the longer one is in contact with that thing, the greater result you'll have. For example, if I need to familiarize myself with an exercise and I do that movement and then I do something else and then a half an hour goes by and then I pick it up again, and during the day maybe I do 50 times. If I can do 50 times, spread out during the day, or 50 times in one session, that's going to work much better. So if I generate a mental state and I'm able to stay with that for a longer period instead of thinking about it and then thinking of something else and then doing it again and then thinking of it. So the first step, let's say, is about taking the reins of our mind in our own hands. It's telling our mind, stay here. Originally, in these ancient texts, You see, the mind is represented as a monkey. I don't know if you can think of a monkey in a tree in Nepal, in India, and I've seen monkeys everywhere. Have you ever seen a monkey just sitting, relaxed, observing and contemplating the scenery? I've never seen that. Monkeys just jump constantly from one branch to another. So having a monkey mind, nothing against monkeys, that represents is a mind that jumps from one object to another, one thought to another, one memory to another, and is distracted by what one sees and one hears, and then now if you can see near the door, there's one image of the previous lives of Lama Michel Rinpoche, and then right away you can see a kind of road that represents the path to calm abiding. And at the very beginning, these are like the stages of meditation, let's say. And at the beginning, you see this monkey running after a dark elephant, and that's us right now. We're constantly running after what we see, etc. So the first step is learning how to tame our mind, where we say, we calm our mind, we're present now, and we tell our mind, think about this, and the mind thinks about that. How can we do that? There are two main enemies of concentration called Chingwa Egupa in Tibetan, that can be translated as mental fogginess and mental agitation. And most of us, we're at the extreme of mental agitation, excitement, and then once you work on that and your mind doesn't go into all directions, then you can risk falling into the other extreme of mental fogginess, where you don't have all that mental excitement, but this mental fogginess is, unfortunately, is quite pleasurable, and one thinks that one's meditating, but actually one is just familiarizing oneself with that state where the mind is relaxed and a little foggy, this state of mental torpor where we're not really asleep, but we don't have a clear mind either. Because often if we sit down and we try to be present in this present moment, that let's say that mental fogginess is not our problem. Most of us would suffer from the other extreme of mental agitation, mental excitement. What is that? When we feel a pleasure, if I drink something or eat something delicious, or regardless of the pleasure, at a certain point that pleasure finishes, and when that pleasure finishes, naturally we want it to come back, and we look inside and we think, how can we repeat that pleasure? For example, and I've given this example before, I go somewhere, I eat very, very well, and then a few days go by where I'm constantly thinking, how can I go back to such a restaurant and eat so well again? This is the basis of mental excitement. In other words, when there's dopamine, as soon as that experience of dopamine ends, there's an emptiness that comes. And in some contexts, that's very important, because that's what pushes us to act. But to meditate well, we need to diminish these peaks, let's say. So a life where there's this constant spikes of dopamine is not coherent with a concentrated mind, because the more that I'm stimulated, that increase in dopamine, and then you have the opposite with that emptiness. It's very different when we feel the oxytocin, for example, that which with these experiences, when we have the oxytocin, that is more related to exchanging, because dopamine is related to the senses, and as soon as it finishes, we want to repeat it. We feel agitated until we're able to repeat that pleasure, which is much different than the oxytocin that can actually stay. So to meditate well, we need to eliminate the unnecessary stimuli, which is very difficult without pointing my finger anywhere at anyone, but we're all drugged. We have an important addiction to we are very addicted to social media, our cell phones, news, etc. Just at the beginning of June, for example, there was this story of this boy who always had his cell phone in his hand. At a certain point, the parents say no. He was just an adolescent. They took away his cell phone, and this boy, he was really feeling sick, and he had a panic attack with convulsions. They had to sedate him in the hospital, and the doctor this boy came with symptoms of abstinence, as if he had been a heroin addict. And it was because they had taken away his cell phone. And someone might say, well, I'm not at that level. But everyone needs to look, thank goodness he wouldn't be at that level, but everyone needs to look for himself. So there is an addiction, and it takes up space in our mind. And this goes in the opposite direction of meditation. I'm talking about this for one reason. I have this feeling that teaching how to meditate without facing this aspect is like I give you a sponge, and I say, okay, dry up the water on the floor, but I'm leaving the faucet open. Okay, first let's close the faucet, and then we can dry up the floor. Maybe it's even just a little bit. Close that faucet. Diminish the amount of information that we receive. This is essential also because when we receive too much information, our mind is blocked and doesn't have the space to go deeper. So really, it's a request, heart to heart, if we want to protect our mental health, if we care about our mental health, we need to diminish the amount of information that we receive. I've turned our cell phone off every once in a while. Leave the house without your cell phone. It is possible, even just to go around the block, and then maybe as you get a little bit more familiar with it, then you can get all the way to the bar. Last night, for example, I came home and I forgot my cell phone in the car, and I said, oh, wonderful, I'm just going to leave it. My first impulse was, oh no, I'm going to go get it. But then I said, no, let me just leave it there. So let's try to diminish this, and once we're able to do that a little bit, then we can talk about meditation. So this first step to meditate is about being more present in the present moment, to be able to direct our mind. And then that next step would be to choose an object of meditation, which can be compassion, can be love, can be awareness, can be the preciousness of this life, and the certainty of death. I mean, there can be just infinite number of objects of meditation, but we need to choose one. And at the beginning, there's a common, common error when we try to keep our mind still on something. Our tendency would be to constrain the mind. So if I say, okay, let's sit down, observe your breath and don't think about anything else, our tendency would be to force our mind to stay on our breath, and we don't want to think about anything else. When I was very young, Lama Ganchen said to me, remember, when you tell someone not to do something, that's what the person wants to do. There's a rebellious nature that we have, or we say, okay, don't do this, and the mind does that. Like the story of this practitioner who wanted to. This is an Indian story. He went to the mountains of the Himalayas. He went to a master and said, I'm here because I want to find how to free myself from suffering. Can you please teach me how can I do that? How can I be free from suffering? The master says, oh, it's very easy. You just meditate on anything. It's very easy. All you need to do, you can do anything you want, but don't think about the blue monkey. And he started he said, oh, okay. And then he went to sit to meditate. And what did he meditate on? The blue monkey. So if I say to you, if I tell you, sit down and don't think about anything other than your breath, then you're going to think about everything except your breath. So one of my masters said, if you go with a child to a marketplace, and the child starts saying, I want this, I want that, what's the technique if you don't want to buy something? You say, oh, look at that. You distract. You bring the child's attention somewhere else. I mean, our man can't stay still on two different things at the same time. So we need to give our mind an alternative to calm this constant inner dialogue. We need to give an alternative to our mind, a place where our mind feels busy and well. And to do this, I mean, the best technique that I've found up to today, before meditating, we need to do this preparation based on breathing techniques. Once we learn how to breathe correctly, and we do certain breathing techniques, which I'm going to explain to you now, then naturally our mind calms down, and our mind says, okay, I'm ready to stay. I'm ready to stay still. We give a place for our mind to stay still instead of forcing our mind to stay on one point. Are you following? Okay, so when we breathe, according to how we breathe, we're going to stimulate our sympathetic or our parasympathetic nervous system. So we're going to become more agitated or more calm. If our breathing is high up in our chest, that brings the more agitation. It can help for having a faster mind, a more logical mind, but that generates agitation. Instead, when we breathe with more deeply with our abdomen, that brings more calm to our mind. This is something physical. It works like this. You need to just depending on the way we breathe, and most of us breathe. The breath, the way we breathe, most of us brings more agitation. And then we talk about the posture. So let's look at this first technique of breathing. And if you can apply it to your life, this breathing technique, and it's not meditating yet, but once you're familiar with this kind of breathing, then the doors open to meditating well. So I'm going to explain to you first how to do it, and then we can do it together. So the meditation posture, also for this preliminary meditation to breathing techniques, is important, because if our back is too tense, that creates agitation. If we're hunched over, that brings mental fogginess. So we need to keep our back straight. Traditionally, there are 7 correct postures. Quickly, they're easy. The first is said to sit comfortably. So if one part of the posture is not comfortable, then you need to adjust accordingly. So usually your seat is higher than your knees. So the couch is the worst place to meditate, because one sinks back into a couch normally. So the first is the legs. The posture of the legs traditionally is called the Vajra posture. This would be Vajra posture means to have the both feet above the knees, but remember, it needs to be comfortable. I mean, I've been doing this for many years. I'm able to sit like this, and once you sit there, the benefit is that naturally your back is straight. But if I stay like this for a long time, then my knees hurt, my legs hurt. If I'm not trained enough, and then instead, if I'm meditating with lots of pain, then I'm going to be meditating on the pain in my body, and that's not our objective. So we can do also a half lotus, is called. And personally, I prefer this position, and if that's uncomfortable, you can put both legs crossed under both feet under your thighs, or even in a chair. That's fine too. And what's important is that we imagine at our fontanella, we can imagine like a string that is pulling very, very gently. So our back is straight, but not tense in backwards, or even or up. Sometimes we think our shoulders are relaxed, but they're not. For example, it seems maybe that my shoulders were relaxed, but they're not. So when you sit down, it's worth just moving a little bit just to see if you're really relaxed or not. The hands, the right, traditionally should be on top of the left, with our thumbs that touch. And this is, and the thumbs should be at the height of our belly button. So this works when we're sitting in a half lotus position, but you can also use like some kind of like a sweater or a pashmina or something to raise the level of your hands, but don't hold them up in the air and bring tension to your shoulders. And it's also possible at the beginning just to put your hands on your knees. So so we have our legs, we have our back, we have our hands, our head. So it's not Our head should be just slightly forward. Number 6 would be our mouth. Our mouth is relaxed, ideally with our tongue that touches the palate. It relaxes, but it also helps so that we don't have to swallow our saliva. Um, um, that if you have phlegm instead, that will block it. But if you just have just natural saliva, then it this helps. So you don't have to actually swallow. So 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 if you so otherwise you'll have to otherwise the saliva will just come running out of your mouth if you don't or you have to stop and swallow. I think if I'm concentrated enough to have to have saliva running out of my mouth, then that would be fine for me, but maybe not so nice. Anyway, 7 would be our eyes. The eyes are slightly closed, looking downwards. There are traditions where traditions where one meditates with the eyes looking up or open. Our tradition says slightly closed, and we looking downwards. Imagine the length of your body in front of you, and that's the point where you would look. So these are the 7 points of the posture, and the 8th we can call the 8th posture being our breath. So if you do these preliminaries well, the meditation comes spontaneously. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time, just a lot of effort with not much result. So the first technique would be in a correct posture. You can also just try to not move. Regardless of where the mind goes, you just tell yourself not to move. This is one technique, a preliminary. At the beginning, it's tiresome. It's difficult. You'll want to scratch somewhere. Just don't move. You can try different things, but the experience that I have, that if you start scratching, you won't stop scratching. You just resist, let it pass without really going following this itch. When you're able to stay still for a certain amount of time, then it gets easier, and you overcome the fear of staying still. You relax staying still. This is an exercise that you can do. I did this a lot when I was in the monastery, when there were times of the prayer that I didn't know by heart. Maybe they lasted 40 minutes, and I would say to myself, okay, I'm not going to move. I was a young boy, and I played a little bit with this. And then at a certain point, you don't feel the different parts of your body. Your body is just one. Just stay. The next step is is breath, our breathing, and I want to put emphasis on this today. We can do we're going to work. We'll get to an abdominal breathing, but first let's observe our breath, remembering that when we breathe, it doesn't happen only in our nostrils. It's all the muscles within our body. There's breath, our abdomen, our diaphragm, also our up in our upper body, our chest, our thorax. So we just create awareness of our breath without trying to direct it. And then the next step would be to direct that breathing to an abdominal breathing. Then we breathe more deeply. We swell up our belly when we breathe in, and we tighten it when we breathe out. And then we do, according to Indian tradition, we do a yogic breathing. So first I fill up my belly, then my chest, and then when I exhale, first I take out all the air of my upper body and then my abdomen. Once we're used to that, the next step is the awareness of the four phases of breathing. So I inhale, I hold, I exhale, I hold, and gradually that first holding and the exhale should be twice the length of the inhale and the final exhale. So this will also help us to calm our mind, and then after so those four phases: inhale, hold, exhale, hold. After I heard a couple of days ago that the American Secret Service uses these techniques. They use this against what they call mind trash. So it's also like they call it a box breathing. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Many doctors actually prescribed 4, 7, 8. So inhale 4, hold 7, exhale 8. And they've seen many studies, those who can do this for 15 minutes, this has the same effect as an like anxiety medication. So being able to doing this kind of breathing really helps calm the mind and prepare us for meditation. And we'll feel at a certain point, okay, the mind is ready to be still on an object, and then at that point we can choose our object of actual meditation. But let's start with the breathing. What's important also for meditation and the quickest path, okay, remember that the quickest path is not the shortest one, but it's the one we're able to do, because just to scale a mountain, for example, get to the summit of a mountain, maybe there's a very, very long path that goes round and round the mountain, or you can just go straight up to scale the mountain. Maybe that just scaling the mountain would be faster. But if I don't know how to climb a mountain and I end up falling and spending months in a hospital, that's going to be much longer than walking slowly all the way up. So let's start with the resources and the abilities that we have. So let's do 15 minutes together, because it's really important to have the experience instead of just listening. So we sit with our back straight but not tense. Our shoulders are relaxed. Our mouth is relaxed. Our eyes are slightly closed, looking downwards. We allow ourselves to be present in this present moment, and we observe our own breath. We observe the movement of the muscles as we breathe. We see if our breathing is deep or superficial. Is it regular, irregular, high or low? We observe the sensation at our nostrils of the air that comes in and goes out. We observe the temperature of the air is cooler as it comes in and a little bit warmer when we breathe out. Kindly, with kindness, we bring our breathing to an abdominal breathing. We inhale completely and we inflate our belly. Then we exhale little by little, emptying out as much air as possible until we end up contracting our abdomen. Inhale. And exhale. As we inhale, with one continuous breath, not only do we inflate our belly, but we keep breathing until we inflate also our upper chest, until our shoulders are slightly raised. And as we exhale, we do the opposite. We exhale all the air from our upper chest until we empty out completely the air from our belly, until we contract the muscles in our abdomen. We inhale, counting to 4. We exhale, counting to 6. Inhale in the count of 4. I exhale, counting to 6. Inhale in 4 and exhale, counting to 8. If that's too long, respect your own limits as long as it's comfortable. Inhale in 4. And exhale in 8. Inhale 4. Hold for 4. Exhale in 8. And then hold again for 4. Inhale 4. Hold for 4. Exhale in 8. And hold. Hold. Hold even for 2. Or then 4. And then inhale for 4. Inhale for 4. Hold for 8. Exhale for 8. And hold for 4. Everyone should respect what's comfortable. Ideally, we inhale 4, we hold for 8, we exhale in 8, and then we hold again for 4. So inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. Inhale. Let's breathe without counting, but maintaining the 4 phases. So we inhale, we hold, we exhale, we hold. We keep our awareness on our breath in 4 phases, little by little. We open our eyes. This was just a small taste. Actually, if we do an exercise like this for 15 minutes, ideally 3 times a day, just once a day helps. Enormous amount of positive side effects it will create. One that I've perceived is that when we were here this summer in August, and then we did a walk, I had done the same walk, and I was actually training more at the time, and as I walked up, it was a little bit hard. But those days that we were doing these exercises, you know, 3-4 times a day, that same hike, that same walk, I was able to do with a lot less. It was a lot less. It wasn't as hard, and also it's good for the heart. It's good for the pressure. It diminishes anxiety. It brings more clarity. And during that week, people were telling me that they needed fewer blood pressure medicine pills because they were able to maintain their blood pressure. So I've always said that knowing how to meditate is useless if you don't actually meditate. So when you're able to do this for a while, the actual meditation, I mean, this is, I wanted to talk about this today, but we got lost in something else. But just for next time, we have analytical meditation, we have single-pointed meditation, and we have Shargom meditation, is where we look back at the points of the path. So an analytical meditation is when we take points about something that we already know, and then we imagine that we need to convince someone about that thing. And so internally we go through all of the logical points. So, for example, if we talk about the preciousness of this life, the certainty of death, the uncertainty of the moment of death, impermanence, the importance of love. I mean, there are this infinite number of subjects. You get to a point where you know that, but then you need to get to developing that certainty, and getting to that, developing that mind. And then, because then that certainty, using the analytical meditation, brings us to generating mental states like gratitude or faith, so many different things. And once we get to that point, the single-pointed meditation is when that object of meditation, for example, if it's the feeling of love, I stay with that mental state without thoughts that distract me, ideally without mental fogginess or mental agitation. And then there is the meditation where we go through the steps. It's really quite similar to athletes who need to, for example, do certain moves, and they go through the passages and the. So, for example, in the Guru Puja that we recite here at the that we recite here in the every day. So then, so it's from verse 84 to maybe 113, and every verse talks about a step of the path. So these are like the steps that one needs to take along this path. So first I do this, and then I do this, and etc., etc. So doing like this, one familiarizes oneself with the whole process. And you can do this with anything, from like, something, inside, or like the athletes do, for example. And together with this, the last thing quickly is there's also meditation with recitation, without recitation, with visualization, without visualization, with movement, without movement. There's an infinite combination. What's important is that when we imagine something for our body, for our mind, for our being, it's as if we were doing that thing. So when we remember something beautiful or pleasurable, that the oxytocin naturally increases when we imagine some kind of danger. The cortisol increases, and it's stressful. So it's an enormous difference between understanding something and experiencing that thing. So as we're meditating, we're inducing feelings like love. So there's a level of familiarization that is much stronger. And now, without getting into details, we'll leave this for next time. But the practice of self-healing uses all of these techniques. And I invite you to begin with the first steps. Also, for those of you who've known Buddhism for 30 years and think, oh, I don't need these preliminary techniques. Well, if you sit down and you have perfect concentration, then 3 breaths in and out, it would be enough. But there's some points where maybe one needs 3 hours to calm down the mind. One needs to look at himself. I'm convinced that the better we do the preliminary practices, the rest comes better and more spontaneously. So we concentrate on being present, on breathing correctly, and then naturally our mind will need a place to rest. And so we won't be forcing our mind, but we will be offering our mind a place to rest. And then there'll be other occasions where we can talk about more details, other techniques. And let's remember that at the basis, we allow ourselves to fall in love with inner peace and who we want to be. I mean, it's nice to do many things, but fundamentally, who do I want to be? And live accordingly. This is it, and I thank you very, very much for being here, and with open heart in your mind, and your mind, you're open in your mind, your heart and your mind open, and please put into practice what you find beneficial. So we recited prayers at the beginning, and now is traditionally we recite prayers to dedicate. We dedicate for inner and outer peace, and where there are great conflicts, may they become small, and may the small conflicts absolutely disappear. That dedicate to all of those who are in a state of sickness, may they be free from sickness and find an inner state of peace.
Drove munsel takto ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama da drame cheki pela long ching sadan lamge yente rapzo ne dorje change kopa nyur tob sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin ninsen takto delek pe Chingi lobo kuncho sumki ngodrubutsol kuncho sumki trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the 3 jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good lunch. Today we did it on a Saturday because tomorrow I'll be in Padova and I won't be here on Monday either. So we'll see each other next Saturday. Next Saturday, the teachings will be in the morning, because in the afternoon I need to translate also for my master, Kyabche Chija Rinpoche, because I'll have to translate for when it'll be the morning there. So there'll be teachings in the morning, and I'll be there to do. I'll be So I'll be there here in the morning for the teachings, and then be translating in the afternoon, or for the afternoon until midnight, because it'll be all day for them there. So these teachings, Saturday and Sunday morning, it'll be the graduated path to enlightenment, the Lamrim teachings. Thank you very much. Have a good lunch.